There's a lot of die-cast model tanks on the market today, but let's find out if this Dragon Armor Panther G late production die-cast model tank, all in 1/72 scale, belongs on your shelf. So here's the packaging on this Dragon Armor Panther G late production die-cast model tank, all in 1/72 scale. So typical packaging for Dragon Armor has a front view, a top view, which is very nice. Here's a side view. And here's the bottom view. So one thing I want to point out when it comes to the die-cast model tanks is make sure it says die-cast model on the back side pointed here. If the wording is not present on the packaging, it's definitely not a die-cast model. There is some vendors that are selling these as a die-cast, and they're really not. So make sure it says die-cast on the back of the model. So let's go ahead and take this bad boy out of the packaging. And as you can see, it has a plastic base and a clear plexiglass top on it for protection. So typically, you could technically display it just like this. So the die-cast model is held in place by two screws here. And all you need is a Phillips head screwdriver to take it out. So let's go ahead and take off the top here. So technically you could display your tank just like this. Actually, you can make a nice little diorama out of the base here and then put the plexiglass cover back over it for protection. Great idea there. But in the meantime, guys, let's go ahead and take this tank off its base. And like I said, I want to use a Phillips screwdriver to take it off. Just be very careful when you're holding the tank while you're taking off the screws, because it's a very some of the parts on it are very fragile. So this is by no means is a play toy. So just be caution when you're taking off the screws from the base. So before we get into the details of this Panther G diecast model by Dragon Armor, I just wanted to go deep dive into a little of the background of the Panther G, which is very interesting. So let's start off with the front armor, which is very interesting. It is at 80 millimeters, sloped at 55 degrees. But what's interesting about the armor on the Panther G, it was made in a single piece, where previous versions were made into 3 different pieces welded together. So manufacturing it in one piece reduced cost and time actually building the Panther Gs, and it made it a little bit stronger also. Now the side armor actually increased for the Panther G. It went up to 50 millimeters, sloped at 50 degrees, which protected the soldiers inside a little bit better compared to previous generations of the Panther tanks back in World War II. Now the upper decks, like the rear decking, the armor is 15 millimeters thick, or excuse me, 16 millimeters thick, and the front armor is 17 millimeters thick. So what's very interesting about the Panther G is the front mantlet. On previous versions of the Panther, the mantlet was rounded in shape, where you'll notice on this Panther G, it's kind of squared at the very bottom. And that was done for a main reason. And the reason is that, for example, if a Sherman or let's say a Russian T-34 would fire a round, it had a tendency to ricochet off the lower portion of the mantlet and penetrate the upper deck front portion of the tank, which where the radio operator, the main gunner, and the driver were located. So they were vulnerable. So to compensate for that, they added a squared off piece to the lower mantlet, and that was called, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, a Shing version. So this is very unique to the Panther G models, and most Panther Gs receive this type of armor. So that's pretty cool that it's added to this diecast model, which you don't see very often or talked about very often. So the main gun on this bad boy is a 75mm L70, which at a long range can penetrate most T-34 and Sherman tanks with ease. So it was a great addition for the Panther G back in World War II. So let's get into the detail of this Panther G, and let's see if it should be added to your collection of World War II tanks. So I was very curious on how much this actually weighed. So this die-cast Panther G from Dragon Armor is at 3.4 ounces. So it has some good weight for a small die-cast model. So let's check out some of the detail on the front of this tank. You have your machine gun up front here. You have some of the tow hooks up front here. Nice addition. You have the single headlight up front here. Some of the optics over here. Now let's check out the road wheels here. Front sprocket, the main wheels, the rear idler. Tracks are weathered, which is very nice. And you'll notice the bottom of this tank has some nice detail on it. And it's also camouflaged on the bottom portion here. Very nice detail. So the main detail of this tank is on its sides. So this main tow hook that's here is separately applied to the model. And when it comes to the die-cast versions, a lot of the extras that are on the tank itself are separately applied. For a good example is the tracks. They're all separately applied to the model, shown here. Cleaning rods, separately applied, painted. Let me see if I can get you guys up even closer without distorting the image. So as you can see, guys, there's plenty of detail all over the sides of this tank. And please keep in mind, this is all in 1/72 scale. So a little more detail here. Rear exhaust. Got some more tow hooks here. If I'm not mistaken, if I remember correctly, this is a jack stand. So the upper deck here on the back. Ventilation systems for the engine for this Panther G. So one of the interesting things about the Panther G, which is not talked about very much, is that the interior of this tank was actually heated by the engine. So this did a couple things. So for example, if the Panther G was in a winter environment, the crew could stay warm, but it also served as another purpose because these tanks use acid batteries and they needed to stay warm. So having that extra heat funneled into the main compartment of the tank, number one, it protected the soldiers during winter and also protected those acid batteries. So let's go to the top of this turret here. So you got an MG-34 machine gun. And one thing I want to point out, I've already broke this once. It's very fragile, so just keep that in mind when handling it. But you can see all of the detail on this. It's incredible. So let's go over to the other side here. So you got a separately applied towing hook. Nicely done. Separately painted. Some of the accessories here are separately applied. You got your tracks here, separately applied. Got some more tracks up here to increase some armor protection for the upper hull. So as you can see, and the camouflage painting on here is absolutely fantastic. So the barrel does go up and down, and it'll stay, but it is kind of shaky. So be cautious of that. So you can see how it moves back and forth like that. It's a little shaky. But like I said previous in the video, this is not a play toy. Even though it's die cast, it's still, some of the parts could break if played with. So this is meant to sit on a shelf looking pretty. So the numbers are nice and crisp here. So they got the rear hatch here. Panther G crews usually kept this open to let some ventilation into the compartment and also to discharge rounds as they fire them. And you got the hatches up here, nicely done. The front mountlet again, the main gun. So guys, let me know what you think about this 1/72 scale Panther G die-cast model from Dragon Armor. For me, I think this is definitely an A+, and it's going to stay in my collection for quite a while because it's packing so much detail for such a small model, and probably the only ones that could really do that is Dragon Armor, even though there's other competitors in the market that sells 1/72 scale armor tanks, but Dragon Armor, I think, went above and beyond when it came to this model. Anyway, let me know what you guys think about this model. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please hit that like button and subscribe button so you can keep up to date on our latest videos. Until next time, guys, have a good one.